In the United States, we have a pretty entrenched belief that more money equals more happiness. And it could be 500,000 a year, it could be 1,000,000 a year, it could be 75,000 a year. The number doesn't really matter as much as the feelings about it matter. How I feel, I still be chasing money.
The hardest decisions in life rarely come with instructions. They come with opinions, expectations, and a whole lot of unsolicited advice. This is Unpopular Decisions, where we're revealing what it really takes to choose differently, even when it's not popular. I'm your host, Jamila Calhoun. At some point, a lot of us realize our problem is not how much money we make, it's how we feel about it. Today, I'm joined with Jamie Piper, financial behavior specialist and founder of Money, whose work helps people understand how their past experiences with money really shapes the way they make decisions today. This episode is about money anxiety, financial trauma, and why earning more doesn't always help you to feel more in control. Let's get into it. Jamie, thank you so much for being on Unpopular Decisions. So many of our audience have just talked about their own financial anxiety and the role it plays in the decisions we make. So I know this conversation is going to really be so transformative. So thank you for being on.
Thank you so much for having me. I just absolutely love talking about financial psychology. So I'm excited to dive in. I just hope I don't talk too much.
No such thing. And look, we could probably go one for one on over talking, for sure. So but maybe before we dive in and get to the juicy stuff, if you wouldn't mind telling our listeners who you are and what types of unpopular decisions do you help people with?
Yes. So I'm Jamie Piper. I am a financial behavior specialist, and I help high achievers make the unpopular decision to stop chasing money and success and start chasing contentment instead.
Ooh, okay. I mean, this is literally one of the reasons I started this podcast is just this idea of really giving people the gumption and the grit to start choosing themselves, choose their path to contentment. And money is a big way that we keep ourselves from stepping into our own power and living the life that we want. So, before you became a financial behavior specialist, what kind of question were you even trying to answer in your own life?
Oh, I love this question so much. I spent years trying to understand why our relationship with money is so complicated. It's so
Mm,
complicated. And I thought I had it all figured out. And I was doing consulting at the time, and I was trying to help my clients with their relationship with money and, doing all the things you do as a business owner, pricing and sales and all of this. And then we got into some really deep questions about value and self-worth and how much do I deserve and that type of thing, and I just realized this is far more complicated than I ever thought it was, and then observing my own financial behaviors, I realized I don't even understand why I'm making the decisions that I'm making, so I didn't get why our relationship with money was so complicated.
yeah. And maybe actually explaining what a financial behavior specialist is, actually, for our audience. I'm sure
Yeah,
there's lots of
absolutely.
curiosity.
Absolutely. So, some of my clients call me a financial psychologist, which is actually not accurate. There's probably maybe five financial psychologists worldwide. But a financial behavior specialist is someone who uses proven financial psychology tools and techniques to help people improve their relationship with money. So it's not about wealth building, financial planning, that type of thing. It really addresses the emotional and behavioral aspects of money. And my specific focus is on beliefs that influence behaviors. So, starting with the subconscious mind, it's all very psychology based. So, I help people find peace, contentment in their relationship with money, no matter how much or how little they have. So I always
Yeah.
like to say, I don't care how much money you have. I care about how you feel about it. If you're a millionaire and you're miserable, I have a problem with that. Let's work together so I can help you with that. If you're poor and happy as a clam, fantastic. We don't need to work together.
Yeah. Well, we can all name plenty of miserable billionaires who are in our culture right now. So, what you're saying resonates so much. And I was even reading that there was a stat that 80% of financial decisions are believed to be made emotionally over purely rationally. So, I can just imagine the work that you do is so important to help people understand the emotions that are happening in the background.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and, it's really unfortunate that the standard finance community/industry slash industry has focused so much on the logical, strategic, tactical, tangible aspects of money and have largely ignored the emotional and psychological aspects of money, throughout most of history up until the last few decades. And really, the last, I would say, 5 to 10 years, there's been more of an emphasis on it. Most people assume that if they have a budget and they have a financial plan, they'll just follow it.
Mm,
That it doesn't work that way usually, and most financial planners will tell you that they have struggles with, compliance, um, helping their clients make decisions that are healthy for them. It can be very complicated, so, I like to look at the kind of underlying driving factors behind financial decisions that people make, and how they feel about it, if they feel financial anxiety, if they feel fear, yeah, it can get very complicated. So that's my domain is I do help clients with the tactical. I help them with budgeting, but it's very basic, simple stuff. It's not complicated. But my passion is really the psychology behind the
mm.
behaviors and the decisions.
Right. And I mean, you kind of alluded to this, but of course there are so many kind of financial influencers or, gurus giving advice, but what's the biggest lie that you think society tells us about money that you're trying to do your part to correct?
Yeah, I love this question so much. We could talk about this all day. I'm very passionate about this. I need to preface my answer by saying I am not anti-money. I do not hate money. I am not opposed to wealth building whatsoever. I happen to love money. I think money is a beautiful, powerful thing. However, in the United States and many other developed countries, we have a pretty entrenched belief that more money equals more happiness, more
Mm,
money equals less stress, more money equals less contentment. And I think there is some truth in that, but I believe that that's a misguided goal. I don't believe that more money guarantees greater happiness or greater contentment with life, period. I believe that contentment and happiness with life comes from aligning our values with how we invest our time, which is our most valuable asset that we have. I will say money comes and goes, but time once spent is gone forever. You never get it back. So, deliberately, intentionally, thoughtfully thinking about how we invest our time is more important than building wealth for wealth's sake.
yeah.
So, this is something that I work with clients on, and it's really a shift in thinking. I do believe it's a lie that there's this belief and this teaching, especially from all the get rich gurus, and I mean, there are a dime a dozen, that you make a lot more money and you'll feel a lot less stressed and you'll take more vacations and life will just be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting. Of course, when you first said it, made me think of the Notorious B.I.G. "Mo Money, Mo Problems"
I
song.
say that
So
all the time. I say that every day. More money, more problems. That's right.
exactly. And yeah, what you're saying is kind of borne out. I was also reading like 1 in 3 high income earners still feel financially insecure. And, the strong salaries definitely, of course, we know getting the baseline of your human needs met is so important. But once you're beyond a certain point, people still feel a measure of it's not enough. And how do you actually understand what is enough for yourself, for your family, and so on? It's just something we don't have a clear rubric for. So you're always left with the feeling that you're behind in some way, shape, or form.
Absolutely, absolutely. Here's another stat that's not published, but my
Mm,
my mentors in grad school, when I studied financial psychology, they told us that they do traditional financial planning services for many millionaires and some billionaires. And they did just a real informal little research study and asked their millionaire, billionaire clients, how much money is enough money for you? And
Mm.
guess what they all said? Every single one of them had the exact same answer. Guess what it was?
No such thing?
I will never have enough money.
Wow.
There will never be enough. So there's no goalpost whatsoever. And whenever I think of that, I think about that a lot. And I think about running a marathon that has no finish
Mm.
line. And there's always someone ahead of you, or most of the time there's someone ahead of you, and you're trying to beat them. So then it becomes a competition. It's keeping up with the Joneses and competing with the neighbors and competing with the other billionaire. And now someone else is the richest person in the world. I just think, what an exhausting way to live, you know?
Yeah.
It doesn't sound very pleasant or satisfying to me. I think it's important that each person come up with their enough number and everyone can determine for themselves what that looks like. I've done it myself. It is not an easy process. It takes time. It takes a lot of soul searching. It takes knowing yourself well. It takes having your values very clearly defined, knowing what's really important to you, knowing how you want to invest your time, where you see yourself in the future. So it's a complicated exercise. It's not easy. But it's possible. It's absolutely possible. And then you make decisions about, if I make more than that, what do I do with that money? Or do I
Mhm.
scale back? Do I dial back? And it could be 500,000 a year, it could be 1,000,000 a year, it could be 75,000 a year. The number doesn't really matter as much as the feelings about it matter. How will I feel? Will I still be chasing money? Still trying to get more money, more success. It just all comes down to how you feel about it. How do you feel in your relationship with money? Are you at peace? Do you feel good? You feel content? Feel proud of yourself? Or are you just chasing?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned coming up with that number for yourself because I feel like to some extent, a lot of people probably have not done it with the level of rigor that you're talking about. But I feel like when you grow up, you're like, oh, yeah, once I make this amount, I'm going to get this house or something like that. And then for some of us who are lucky enough, you hit the number, you get there, and you just keep moving the goalpost. So, what do you think contributes to that part of the dynamic and not giving yourself congratulations and the moment to kind of say, "Well, I did it." And now we can recalibrate.
I think there's two factors at play here. I think that part of it is just simply boils down to lifestyle inflation. And it's very slippery slope because a lot of people who fall prey to lifestyle inflation go into debt
Mhm.
because they don't really understand how to manage their money properly. The second part of that, I think, is going back to values, is simply being unaware of what an individual's deeply held values are. Now, when I talk about values, I'm not talking just about things like friends, family, hobbies. Those are basic. I have created a values exercise where I've identified over 100 unique values, and they're very specific. And there are very specific outlets for each one, if you will. Like,
Mhm.
this is just an example. My number one value in life is freedom. So, figuring out what the real core values are is critical to understand where to intentionally put the money. I look at money as a tool. It's neutral. We assign it value. It doesn't have value on its own. We assign it value. So if we intentionally, thoughtfully, deliberately decide how to use the tool that is money and align that tool with our deepest held values, that's where we find true contentment in life. That's a strong belief that I have. It doesn't come from just having more money. It comes from specifically what we do with it and knowing why we're doing what we choose to do with our money instead of just spending it on lifestyle
Right.
inflation.
Yeah. Well, immediately I was just thinking about just how Americans upgrade their phones like more than any other country. And we've been kind of put into that treadmill dynamic and it's just an expectation. So I love how you're kind of disrupting people doing these behaviors just automatically without thinking about it. Um, of course, we also want to get to know a bit about yourself. And I'm curious about a decision that you made that maybe felt unpopular, either about your career, about money, that people didn't understand and how you kind of navigated making that choice.
My previous career was I was a very successful commercial photographer. I was probably a top 5 in my specialty, and I did a lot of travel for work. I'd be flown around the country for assignments, working with big ad agencies in LA and New York. I was making great money, but deeply dissatisfied. I mean, I got to the point where I was just absolutely miserable. I would cry after photo shoots. I was so unhappy, and I was so stressed, and I was so burnt out, and I knew something had to change, and I just couldn't keep going down the path I was on. I spent months exploring all the options. What do I do next? Because I really thought I'd be a photographer for the rest of my life. I toyed with the idea of going back to school. My undergrad degree is in psychology. I absolutely love it. I'm fascinated with human behavior. I remember posting on my Facebook wall many years ago, I'm thinking about going to grad school. What do you guys think? And it was a resounding thumbs down. Um,
Wow.
I'm over 50, so I think most of my friends and family were like, basically, like, "You're too old. You're too old to, change your career, change your life, go back to school, and the student loans and all that." And so I wrote it off, but I kept that in the back of my mind, and I just kept thinking, I feel like I need to learn more. I've just had this quest to expand my mind. I learned about financial psychology, which blew my mind. It's kind of a random chance, and I was like, "Oh, I'm in." So I went to grad school. That was kind of the path of my journey to figuring out, like, money is really complicated. Seeing it in myself and then seeing it in all these clients I worked with over so many years, feeling like I was failing at helping people, I wasn't providing the needed support, and getting to the point where I'm at now, where it all makes perfect sense. Like, now I totally get it. Like, I understand. I work with so many clients who just say, "Janie, I don't understand why I do this. I feel so stupid or guilty or confused or whatever, because this doesn't make any sense." And I say, "Well, I understand why." It makes perfect sense to me. It all makes perfect sense to me. Like, I get it. I get it now, which is an amazing feeling.
Wow. Well, there's so many aspects of that story. I think the idea of asking your Facebook friends on a wall post for a big life decision like that, for feedback on that, is honestly so human. Like we all do that. As soon as we're considering a big move, the first thing we do is call up a friend. It's like, does that sound like me? Is that something I should do? When you're the only one who can really answer that question, but we all crave that validation when we're on the brink of something new. So I just think that's such a visual representation of that aspect of ourselves, and I can't believe that everyone gave you the thumbs down. That is so rude.
I know. So when I did decide to apply, I didn't tell anyone, of course, because I was like, well,
Mm,
they're not gonna be happy, they're not gonna like it, because everyone said, "No, don't do it. That's a terrible idea." So I went against that, I was like,
yeah,
I had to do some soul searching and follow my love and my passion, and that's what I chose to do. I think that's important, if you are at a crossroads making an unpopular decision, is to be okay and to be centered with making a choice that you already know other people disagree with. Because at the end of the
yeah,
day, you live your life for you. You don't live your life for other people. So it's
exactly.
very important to make decisions that sit well in your heart and your soul.
Yeah, exactly. And we had another guest on the show talk about when she was actually going pursuing coding boot camp, she didn't tell anyone in her life about it either. Yeah, sometimes you have to move in silence because if it's going to hold you back from doing what's true to you, then that's ultimately better to just go for it and do it. And maybe you just don't have to tell anybody about
Right,
it.
right.
Maybe now we'll dive into our little game. Would you rather? Maybe we'll get a sense of some of your money values in this game as well. So, okay. So, would you rather inherit wealth, like a large sum, but it comes with family drama? You know, probate
Can I just say
court.
no
Who
already?
knows? Oh, okay.
Can I just say choice B,
Okay.
whatever choice B is? Continue.
I love that. Actually, now I'm like gonna think of something that's terrible for choice B, and now you have to stick with it.
Okay,
Uh,
okay.
no, no, no. I'm just kidding. But yeah, so inherit wealth with family drama, or have to kind of bootstrap your own business that grows really slowly and takes like 10 years for you to break even.
The second one.
Yeah.
It's an easy answer for me because the other thing too is that for me, my purpose in life is growth. And growth doesn't always come from the easy path. Growth usually comes from the hard, challenging paths and the life lifing on you. So it goes far beyond just this human existence for me.
Oh, I love that. And the clarity you have about your values is something that we're all trying to distill for ourselves. Okay, I know you're not into the fancy things necessarily, but I just wanted to get a sense. Okay, so if, money was no object, are you going to be one of the people with the 10 fancy cars or the 10 homes?
Homes, I love homes. I still want to be an interior designer. That's my dream job. So if I could design all of them with all the pretty decorations, that would be like a dream come true for me. But then I would fill them with people who've never really had opportunities in life. I'd hire a researcher to find these families who could fill these homes so that I would not own homes that would just sit vacant all over the country or the world. That doesn't sit well with me.
Well, number 1, I'm now also hearing your maybe 3rd career, path could be interior
Maybe if
designer.
I could ever
Uh,
afford it, if I become really wealthy, then maybe it would be like a fun final career.
yeah, okay, okay. Well, you already bet on yourself once, so I'm betting on you figuring it out,
Thank you,
for
Jamila. I
sure.
appreciate that. That makes me excited for the future.
Yeah. Okay, well, you did say if you got a lot of money, this might be one thing you spend it on, but
Yes,
I guess if you got a big windfall, what would be your first big purchase potentially?
it would be a waterfront facing condo on a high rise in San Diego in the Little Italy neighborhood. Ideally, a two-bedroom with a wraparound balcony. That's what I'd like. With two parking places.
So specific.
Yes, that's very specific.
Do you have this place saved on Zillow already?
Oh, of course. Yeah, I have the
Yeah,
building.
yeah.
I think I almost have the address memorized. I can I can picture it when I close my eyes.
Oh, I love that. I need to do some more vision boarding clearly because you have got it locked in. I have a picture in my head now of Jamie's life in 10 years, and it's
Yes.
San Diego condos. She's interior designing.
Yeah, exactly. It's
I love that for
that
you.
visioning is critical in meeting financial goals. In fact, there are research studies
Mm.
done on this that people are significantly more successful at meeting their financial goals if they incorporate their senses into it. Vision, smell, touch, taste. If you can feel that dream, you're far more likely to make it a reality. So I have exercises I have my clients work on where they draw pictures. So you're not thinking about this elusive, nebulous, "Oh, I'm gonna retire and travel." Like, specifically, where are you? How does it feel? What does it smell like? What's the temperature like? So, this is something that I do myself.
I'll share with the audience. I'm really excited. Jamie and I are actually going to do a real session together down the line, and we may even share it with all of you guys so that you can really see what's going on for me. So, everything she brought up about entrepreneurship and how it really taps into your sense of your own worth, that envisioning of your future. I'm going through all of that myself right now. So I cannot wait for that session and to share it with you guys. But to give us a window into what you do, we'll actually in this segment talk more about, one of the clients that you've worked with and how your approach really helped them make a change.
Yeah, so this is I love this example because this so perfectly highlights the value that I believe that I bring to people, and just how complicated our relationships with money can be. So this client won a lawsuit settlement payout, $4 million tax-free. She was a single mom, struggled her whole life. The source of the money was very painful, faced many, many challenges in this lawsuit for years. But in any case, it was a very, very complicated situation. And what made the situation even more complicated was that she held very deep, rich people are evil. You can't be a good person and have money beliefs, other similar beliefs equating wealth with very negative things. Effectively hated millionaires. And when she came to me, she was pretty panicked, to be honest. I understood when she explained the situation why she would feel so challenged. So one of her hardest decisions was, do I keep this from the people in my life? This is someone who's very down to earth, you know, truck owning, boot wearing, camping, drinking beers with the friends type of person, not Upper East Side Manhattan going shopping to buy designer bags, like opposite lifestyle. And so she was really concerned about people knowing that she had this newfound wealth. What will they think of me? And what is my identity now?
Mhm.
I hate millionaires, and now I am one. So does that mean I hate myself? If not, how do I reconcile my new identity with these beliefs I've held my whole life? The identity and the relationship aspect is really the two most challenging, in my opinion, the two most challenging aspects of sudden wealth for anyone who experiences it, because you have questions of, who am I now? Who do I trust? Who do I tell? What will they think of me? How many people will ask me for money? Do people only care about my money now? Is this a true friend? The common belief in this country is, oh, poor little rich girl. Oh, I wish I had those problems. Give those problems to me.
Mm.
I'll see what I do with it. But there's real pain there. There's real pain and real confusion there. So I worked with this client to help her decide what her boundaries were around money, how much to share with the people that she knew, how to make decisions about who to keep in her life and who to lose. And most importantly, who am I now? How can I redefine myself? And what choices do I make with my money? I mean, it's huge. It's a totally overwhelming decision when you go from having no money to having $4 million you can do whatever you want with. So it was very, very complicated. But what was just profound for me is that within a short period of time of working with her, she broke down and she said, "You changed my life." And I was like,
Wow.
"That's why I do this." She found contentment. She started traveling. She kept the friends that she trusted and lovingly said goodbye to the ones she didn't. She made thoughtful decisions about what to do with her money, what was really important to her based on her values. She's so happy now. I keep trying to get her to book her next session. She's like, "Oh, good." I'm like, "You have so many more sessions left with me." Like, she's like, "No, I'm good."
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
the power of the transformation that you can do. She's like, couple sessions, I'm great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'd be curious for your thoughts around like the symbolism of the choices that we make with money, especially when you're talking about something that is visible to other people around you.
I can't help but think about the peacock. And you and I talked about this before. My money's inner zoo framework. I don't know if we have time to dive into that, but
If you don't mind actually taking a step back and like walking us through that framework, I think now's a perfect time to start to share with our listeners what you work on because I think I resonated so much with it.
in financial psychology, one of the research studies that was done is called Klonk's Money Script Inventory. And it's all about people's beliefs, usually subconscious beliefs that influence their financial decisions and behaviors. They researched several thousand financial planning firm clients and students, and did this research study twice. So it was statistically significant, scientifically verifiable, and they discovered that people largely fall into one of four different groups of thoughts or beliefs. And they call those money avoidance, money focus slash money worship, money status, and money vigilance or hypervigilance. This is a tool that I've used in my coaching practice for a long, long time. And I realized people's eyes would glaze over, it just didn't make any sense. I don't know what you're talking about. So what I did was I created a framework that uses animals as an analogy for these different core groups of beliefs. And I call it your money's inner zoo, or the inner zoo for short. And so the avoidance is a turtle. The money of worship is a hamster running on the money making wheel. Money status is a peacock. And money vigilance is an owl. which can also be hypervigilant, which is not a good thing. So I created this entire framework around it that I use in my coaching practice and that I use to help people identify with their core beliefs around money, which I keep saying subconscious because most of the time people just aren't even aware that they have these beliefs. And they've had them oftentimes since they were a teenager, 20s maybe, or even younger. But these beliefs drive their decision making process without any awareness around why I'm doing this. You had mentioned we're talking about the truck and the symbolism. So the purchase of the truck for my client was like a peacock move. But she was not a peacock. She was an
Mm,
owl. She was hyper vigilant about her spending and always had been because she always needed to be. So that purchase was really out of alignment with who she was. It was more of like an experiment than anything else, you know? I think I want this. I'm gonna see if I like it and, eh, take it or leave it, you know?
yeah.
Um, I have a free quiz on my website. You don't have to put your email address in or anything. It's Your Money's Inner Zoo. It's on my homepage. So anyone can take it and see if they identify with this animal. And then what's really fun is because while I love learning about the what and the how, um, or the what and the why, I really appreciate the how. How do I change these behaviors if these are unhealthy? So I also created as part of the inner zoo framework illuminated animals, and they are like the emotional support animals for the inner zoo animals that help model healthy financial behaviors. So I have 4 of those as well. It's really fun to be able to talk about animals because it reduces our shame, it depersonalizes the, behaviors so that we don't feel so guilty, confused, ashamed, I can say, "Oh, I'm feeling very turtley today. I'm not gonna open that bill." I just don't. I just can't today.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely resonated with me. I feel like I've got some turtle and some hamster vibes,
Mhm.
for sure. But yeah, I mean, a lot of times people do feel trapped. They're earning well, but maybe feel like, oh, I can't let go of what I have. What type of lens do you find shows up when you're hearing that type of thing from your clients? And then maybe what's that illuminated animal version that you're trying to move them towards when they're saying, oh, I can't do that. I've got a job, I've got a mortgage. They're feeling trapped.
Yeah, I mean, it's really tough. I'm always concerned about coming off as being really flippant, like, I don't understand people's situations, but I do. Real life is real life, you have responsibilities and obligations. The hamsters that I work with are usually the high achieving, very successful, often A-type personalities, often workaholics, making a lot of money, frequently overwhelmed, stressed, may have health problems, may have relationship problems, exhausted. The driving force behind that behavior is often external. So it's some sort of external validation. It's expectations from society, parents, family, friends, etc. And I certainly experienced that. I'm a reformed hamster, and it goes back to the values is learning what's truly important to you in your life. When people hit a certain point in their high achieving experience, they realize that's not what's really important to them. And this is the journey that I went through as well. Other things are more important to them, like spending time with their kids, having time to just relax and read a book at a cafe. And so I think doing soul searching, journaling about thoughts and feelings about that situation, earning well, but feeling trapped. Where do I go from here? Why is my brain working like this? Why am I on this hamster wheel that I cannot seem to get off of? Why am I doing this? Who am I trying to impress or who am I trying to whose expectations am I trying to live up to? Sometimes it's internal, sometimes we can be really hard on ourselves. I know that was true for me, but I finally figured out it was one of my parents that that behavior came from expectations that I could never ever meet. Again, it can get complicated, and I think therapy can be really helpful there too to find out like what is motivating me? What is driving this behavior? And is this what I really want? And what does the alternative look like? And what does the worst case scenario look like if I change this situation?
Right, right. It's interesting you touched on the idea of inherited kind of money beliefs, maybe coming from a parent or major adult figure who was in your life early in life, or maybe a really tough specific moment or experience that you've gone through. How do you help people maybe unpack or connect the dots when maybe they don't realize that their behavior is coming from a particular experience or a kind of parental figure that drove this belief home for them?
It's actually far simpler than I think most people would assume. I ask, questions. I would encourage you, if you're watching, to ask yourself these questions. What was my dad like with money? What was my mom like with money? If I didn't have dad or mom, what were my parental figures like with money? Whoever cared for you, helped raise you, what was their relationship like with money? How did they treat money? What did they say about money? Because oftentimes people will say things that indicate their core beliefs. You shouldn't spend money on that. That's ridiculous. That's frivolous, or whatever they're saying, because there are often patterns that you can identify between the people who helped raise you, and that includes, like, family friends as well, friends that you had growing up, what their lifestyle was like, and how you are now. And it's not at all uncommon to go to one extreme or the other, to either be exactly like one of your parents or the polar opposite of that, where you're like, I don't want anything to do with that. So I think just really taking a hard look, and again, journaling, at least thinking about what your formative experiences were like with money. And then the other thing too is that your early working experiences have a big impact as well. Maybe you had a really easy job. Maybe you worked for family. Maybe you barely did anything and they paid you. And then you grew up with this expectation that I don't have to work very hard for my money because it just comes to me. And then it life doesn't work out that way usually. Usually have to work for money and, not sit around and stare at your phone all day. So yeah, there's a lot to unpack in people's pasts and their experiences and their family, early working experiences. Even one-off experience with an impactful family member can leave a lifelong impression on you. Like, if you're a good boy, I'll give you $1. And then you think, "Oh, my uncle's very successful. He's rich. Look at his fancy car. I need to be a good boy in order to get money." And you carry
Mm.
that with you forever. Or religion. Religion plays a big role in people's relationships with money. And that can often be very subconscious because people had, religious teachings when they were young children. Maybe their family left the church or whatever that religion was, but those beliefs still stay with them decades later and can influence financial decisions.
We just touched on this idea of potentially having, inherited money beliefs and the way we move through the world from our parental or authority figures. But you also work with financial trauma. And I'm sure there are people listening who don't quite understand what that could mean and why that might be relevant to the work that you do. If you wouldn't mind just breaking it down for our listeners.
Yeah, so I had never heard of financial trauma until I was in grad school, and then I took another program called the Trauma of Money. Um, and that's when I learned I had personally experienced significant financial trauma. My examples, I think, are really relatable because a lot of people experience this, especially entrepreneurs, and that is inconsistency in income over long periods of time and wild swings in income over long periods of time. I like to just cross those out and write entrepreneur. That's basically the life of an entrepreneur. Money, it's more like a roller coaster instead of like a gentle wave. What's really interesting is there has been research done, and I wish I could remember what the percentage was, but it's over 75%. I want to say it's like 93% of millennials experience financial anxiety that has symptoms that are indistinguishable from PTSD. So we're talking about panic, inability to sleep, ruminating on money and finances, like severe anxiety. So what I did was I created a screening tool, and determined what the specific examples of financial trauma are, and they're very common. So a very common example is divorce can be financially traumatizing. It
Mm.
really depends on the circumstances. It's not always, but if it's expensive and drawn out and painful and there's a severe financial price that can cause financial trauma. Certainly things like losing your life savings, in a pyramid scheme, burning out off that type of thing is like obvious example of financial trauma. The problem with financial trauma is it literally rewires our brain. And we act from a place of what's going to keep us safe. What our brain thinks is going to keep us safe and what actually keeps us safe are not often the same thing. Or our brain keeps us safe, but it's in really unhealthy ways. So the motivations and the decisions that people make, if they're motivated by financial trauma that they've experienced, um, it's a wiring of the brain that really needs to be rewired in order to think differently, be objective, have different perspectives, reframe, and that type of thing.
Wow, that's, incredibly difficult, it sounds like, but it does sound like, yeah, there are so many different, ways that people could have experienced financial trauma that's not talked about through that lens. So I love that you're bringing awareness to the fact that, wow, over 75%, potentially 90% of people really have that in the way that they're approaching money.
And by the way, it's really important for me to say here that it's not about the money.
Mm.
This is what's so confusing to so many people is you can be making great money and have severe financial anxiety. Like make it make sense. It doesn't make any sense, right? That's often financial trauma. If you're terrified of losing your money and you don't want to spend any of it and you're just accumulating, 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 and you get to the point where I worked with one client, she was terrified to buy socks, even on sale. Like it almost becomes like disordered thinking in a way. So it's not about the money. It's not about how much money. It's about how you feel about it. Again, how you feel in the relationship that you have with it. And trauma just makes our brain do really, really weird things.
Yeah. I wonder if there's either one tool or a question that you help people ask themselves that's able to break through the fear or the analysis paralysis or the anxiety, the fastest, or like there's one thing that someone could do or ask themselves if they are maybe making some of these very emotionally driven financial decisions that could help them.
Yeah. I I see a lot of fear around money, fear of losing it, fear of having it, fear of earning too more. People even feel guilt earning more money, especially first gen earners who are earning a lot. Why do I deserve money when other people in my family don't? So there's a lot of fear in people's relationships with money. And one of the exercises that I found both personally and in my work with clients that can be so useful is to go through a worst case scenario exercise.
Mm,
It's not fun to do. It's a pretty unpleasant exercise, but it's literally allowing your brain to think about the worst thing that could happen to you financially and live in that situation mentally. Be there, be present in that experience. Like for me, it's broke, homeless, sleeping in my car, totally alone with no one. That's my worst
mm,
case scenario. And so I have forced myself to like picture myself in that situation. What would I do? What resources would I use? What tools do I have inside of me that have nothing to do with money that could help me in that situation? And so it's a matter of just allowing yourself to dive deeper and deeper and deeper into like the worst, right? I lose my children. I lose my home. Taking it to the most extreme possible. Like, and then do you die? Is that where it ends? What is the end point? What does that look like? Because what's really fascinating is that your brain troubleshoots and problem solves. And you can problem solve your way out of the situation by thinking, well, then I would do this, or then I would do this, or then I would call this person, or I might go to a library, or, whatever, or I would go back to school, or whatever the situation is. And when you know that you have a plan, or at least some idea of how you'd manage the worst case scenario that your fears are based in without really thinking that. So your brain believing that you have a plan for this, that you can handle it, that it's actually not that bad. It really diffuses those fears and makes you go, oh, okay, I can handle that. Yeah, it would suck like a lot, but it wouldn't be the end of the world. It'd be okay. I would be okay. So it's a very powerful exercise. It's the worst case scenario exercise.
Wow, it's like the other side of the visioning exercise that you mentioned earlier. It definitely sounds very intense, but I've done not a full worst case scenario exercise, but what a powerful exercise to have our folks maybe engage in. I also know that some fears that people have really have to do with other people, people's perception of them changing, people's perception of other people using them for money or not being able to trust people anymore. How do those type of social fears, because that's a lot of what this show is about, show up for your clients and how do you help them navigate those social dynamics?
A huge part of our relationship with money is really external, which is interesting. To me,
Mhm.
it's fascinating. Like, why do we care so much what other people think about us? Like one of the reasons why it was so difficult and painful and drawn out and complicated for me to change careers is because my identity was wrapped up in this being a highly successful traveling commercial photographer who's making tons of money. What will they think of me? And I think that's so incredibly common. We place a huge amount of stock in how other people perceive us to be. Most of us want to project an air of success. What ends up happening is that when we're really struggling, especially financially, we don't talk about it. It's the last thing in the world we want to talk about. Say, I'm facing foreclosure or I'm out to file bankruptcy or whatever. We keep those things in the dark, in the shadows, because there's so much shame there. What will people think of me? Um, it's hard because coming to terms with that is really a matter of self-acceptance, of being confident in who you are, being authentic in who you are, being willing to be vulnerable. It's so hard to be vulnerable with money. It's so hard to, speak your truth and say, this is what I've gone through, this is how I felt about myself. It also comes back to values. What do you really value? Do you value other people's opinions more than you value being at peace in your heart and in your soul? I would hope the answer is no. I value my contentment more than I value other people's opinions of me. But it's not easy. I mean, it is not easy to just say, well, this is what I'm going to do, and I don't really care what people think, because it's just ingrained into our society that we need to show success and because happiness and contentment is based on material goods and material wealth and our standing and our status and our success. It's not, at least in this country, it's not based in the quality of our relationships that we have in our family. It's not based on, how long we've had our close friendships for. It's not based on how we feel about ourselves. It's based on all these other factors that are really, in my opinion, quite meaningless.
Mhm. Right, right. And so much of our work is on kind of recalibrating and resetting our own rubric for happiness.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's not an easy process. I mean, I'm not trying to say like, oh, just be confident in yourself and figure it out. No, it doesn't it doesn't work that way. That type of change takes time and intentional, deliberate effort to manifest. But it's possible and it's absolutely worth it. I'm at the point in my life right now where I'm like, oh, it's just so exhausting. It's just so uh, I'd rather sit on the sofa and read a book. You know what I mean?
Exactly. I hear
I
you.
just don't care anymore. Yeah, I just don't care anymore?
Yep, I get it. There's so many different things we could spend our time on, and at some point, the shiny stuff, like, it all starts to look the same, like, it just kinda like, I'd rather just hang out with my cat. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah, right, right. But listen, hey, if the shiny, fancy, expensive things make you happy, go for it. Do it.
Mhm.
I think that uh, having all those things be our target without really understanding why is just a very misguided goal. That's all it is, a misguided goal. I mean, if you know why you're doing it and you're very clear on this is what I value, this is what's most important to me in my life, 1000% support that. Again, it goes back to the values and what really brings you joy and peace in your heart.
Yeah. I'd be curious, you mentioned your client was a single parent. Making parenting decisions around money can be so anxiety ridden, you know. Was there particular conversations you were having with that client around parenting around money? And yeah, how do you help people determine what kind of values they want their children to have?
Yeah, oh, it's a tough one. This is where it gets extra complicated. It's like extra strength complicated when you introduce children into the mix. That client, she was great. Her child was grown, a young adult, so she didn't really have very many concerns there. I have worked with other clients though who have near panic level fear and anxiety over making the wrong decisions about money, despite making a really high income, and it really centers around their children is am I making the right, the best decisions for my children? And I like to remind people that how to explain this in life, we learn things and we don't necessarily learn things from being brought through an exercise training program lesson that someone sits down and teaches us. We learn through observing, right? Especially children, they learn from observing. So they pick up on what you're feeling and what you're saying and what you're doing. "Oh, I'm not going to buy that shampoo. It's 60 cents more. I just, no, put that back." That they learn something from that. You're teaching them how to believe money works in the world. I think what's most important for parents is really being aware of their own behaviors and their own relationship with money because that will rub off. So it really starts with figuring out your own stuff before you can sit down and teach your children and modeling good behavior around money, healthy decision makings where you're I call it balance adjacent because look, let's face it, true balance is almost impossible to achieve in life. But if you can develop balance adjacent where you are saving money, but you're also spending some money on joy and pleasure and fun things, you have balance and you model that. It makes a really big difference with children.
Yeah, yeah. It's so funny. I'm sure so many people listening, I know for myself, can think of really small moments growing up that really kind of set a tone of what you thought about around money. Yeah, and always, I know for my family, and I talk with so many friends. I call us the Marshalls generation, where all of our parents are addicted to Marshalls and Ross and TJ Maxx. They love a
Oh, the
deal.
store. Okay,
The
yeah.
stores.
Uh-huh.
They
Yeah,
they
yeah.
love a deal, and it was just always like, "Oh, man, look at what I found this weekend. It was on sale for this price." And it's like a prize to, like, come home and feel proud of the savings you got, on a deal, and if you I've had to unlearn that dynamic of if I don't want it or I don't need it, even if it's on sale, you're not saving money versus not buying it at all.
Like,
I
it's
think,
okay to spend $48 on a fancy candle. It's okay.
absolutely, and if it's higher quality and it's lasts longer and it just makes you happy, like, totally worth it, versus something
Absolutely.
that's $10 and you never look at it again and you throw it away, so
Right.
so
Exactly.
many things for us to learn. I guess another direction that I hear from a lot of people is just really this idea of what is fear-based behaviors around money versus what is, real risk, where you are maybe doing something that could have a high cost and really could be harmful for your family. That is really tough for people to distinguish, because we have these anxieties that are maybe informed by these messages we got. Those aren't necessarily real, but then there are such thing as real risks. So how do you think about helping people navigate and distinguish between those two internal compasses?
Oh, gosh, this is a tough question. It's a really hard question. When we make financial decisions for ourselves, especially major financial decisions, it can be very helpful to have an objective perspective. Either someone that knows us well or someone that doesn't know us well. Could be a therapist, could be a best friend, could be multiple people. The bigger and more important the decision is, I think the more important it is to get various perspectives. But at the same time, when I mentioned going to grad school and everyone was like, don't do it, terrible idea. Like, then what do? If everyone's against it and it turned out to be a brilliant idea, it was exactly the path I needed to go down. And then the second part of this is I keep going to, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day what other people say you get to make your own decisions around money. And I will say there's great power in committing to a choice because pre-choice, you're kind of in limbo, right? You're like, I don't know. I don't know what to do, which is a terrible feeling when you don't know what to do. It's probably the worst. And then you commit to a decision, you go for it. So that evaluating real risk, that's tricky. That's a really hard question to answer.
Yeah, well, I think to your point, like seeking out information is important, but ultimately it is just information. And we can't outsource the decision to other people, but it is important to equip ourselves with the right perspectives that can help us counteract some of those biases, the overconfidence or other things like that. I know we talked about when we actually met up together when we were in Phoenix, this idea of everything you want in life is on the other side of a decision, and staying in the in between feels safe, but it's actually one of the most expensive and disruptive and stressful spaces to occupy. Part of getting unstuck is ultimately just choosing something and moving forward. So, if there's one idea from your work and what you've seen with your clients that you would want to leave our listeners with, what would it be? And maybe it's one kind of concept for each one of our animal friends, the 4 that you've mentioned.
The most important thing to know, I think, is that there's a reason for all financial behaviors, and sometimes multiple reasons for all financial behaviors. You are not broken. There is nothing wrong with you. You have nothing to feel ashamed about if you don't understand your relationship with money or you don't know why you do the things that you do. There are very good reasons for it. And for each animal, there are usually different specific reasons behind the behaviors. And once you understand what those are, then it becomes a matter of self-acceptance. And when you can accept, this is who I am, this is how I do things, this is my personality, but I can change and I can grow and I can learn and I can evolve and adapt. It reduces the shame and the guilt and the confusion in the relationship with money. And I think that's huge. I think that's like 80% of change is the self-awareness, self-acceptance, mindfulness, and just going, okay, I accept this is how I am and I understand and I'm going to work to change, but doesn't mean I'm a bad person because I make these decisions about money.
Yeah. And I mean, it's actually a perfect segue. Our final question of the show is all about helping people build the courage to live their truth and live without shame. So what would you like to say to the haters? The people who judge people's financial choices, who are kind of out there shaming people for their financial reality without really understanding what goes into it.
I would say one simple phrase that is true: your net worth does not determine your self-worth. Your net worth does not determine your self-worth, period, full stop.
I love that as a reminder to everyone, the haters, but also just all of us who kind of carry so much pressure on ourselves to get to a certain place in order to really feel good about ourselves. So it's a wonderful reminder. And you provided so much perspective and wisdom throughout this conversation on helping people realize that there's not just one right way to build your financial life. So thank you so much for being on the show, Jamie.
Thank you, Jamila. I can't wait to dig into your brain and do a session with you. You're a very brave person for being willing to do that.
I know, but also I'm like, I'm ready for the growth. It's definitely time, and I'm excited and hope it helps other people out there. To that point, of course, you have so many amazing resources for people that are already available. And Jamie's been so generous, not just with her time, but she's actually has a very special offer for all of our listeners here on Unpopular Decisions. She actually does a reveal program, and there are 3 different types, and it's really a discovery process where she digs in to some of your life story and helps you understand your relationship with money in a really deep way and personalized way. And she's offering listeners of Unpopular Decisions 25% off that program. You can sign up at illumoney.com/start your journey. And Illumoney is spelled ILLU money.com. And our promo code just for us is UD25 off. And I really hope you'll take up Jamie on this offer because it's an incredibly deep way to start unpacking your relationship with money and start living for your own contentment and happiness.
Yeah, and I love creating these reveals. So it's what the reveals are. They are custom recorded videos by me. I have you complete a questionnaire, in-depth questionnaire that you can save and come back to as you like. And then I take all the data from your questionnaire and I connect all the dots. I look for patterns in your behaviors and your relationship with money and really dig into your brain. And so it's like a diagnostic audit, really is what it is. And then I create anywhere from a 15 to 30-minute custom video recording. It's just me talking, where I talk about kind of the why and the how, what you're doing really well, what I think you should feel proud of, and then areas for improvement. And I give you a roadmap with very specific action items on where to go next. And then I'll also give you recommendations if you would like to work with me one on one coaching. I'll know exactly what I think would be most transformative for you. And these reveals are very high value. I give you a lot of my time for very little money. And with the promo code, it's basically a no-brainer. Like you got to do it because even if we don't work together, you get huge value and you get to keep the video forever. And I love making them. They're so much fun. It's just like me in my element. So I do hope you sign up for
Hey,
it.
I love that. Thank you so much again, Jamie.
Thank you so much, Jamila. I love talking to you. I could just do this all day long.
We still have more that we're gonna do together, so I'm excited. And yeah, you're now part of the Unpopular Decisions fam.
Yay! I'm so excited. I'm a little nervous for you, but I'm so
Oh,
excited.
okay.
I'll go easy on you, I promise.
Perfect. Perfect. If something in this episode stays with you, it's not an accident. It usually means you're ready to start writing your own script. Make sure to subscribe to Unpopular Decisions wherever you listen or watch your podcasts for more real conversations about choosing differently. We're on a mission to spark 1 million courageous life choices. So if this episode and our content resonates, please share it with someone who might need a little encouragement right now. And leave us a review. It really helps us reach more people. Thanks for listening, and I'm glad you're here.